Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Indicio Identity Community Meetup. My name is Helen Garneau. I do marketing here at Indicio. I'm really happy you all could join us. You're taking time to, if you're watching this later in the recording, thank you. Thank you. These conversations as part of the Indicio Identity Community Meetup are made possible as part of the Indicio public benefit mission to increase awareness, use, adoption, understanding of decentralized identity, verifiable credentials, and associated technologies. We aim to have these monthly conversations talking about different themes, topics, discussion about latest news about any of those technologies, and we are always looking for new topics that you might be interested in. So please feel free to reach out if you have any ideas for speakers or anything you'd like to discuss in future topics. Thank you so much again, and I'll turn it to you, Trevor.
Thank you, Helen. My name's Trevor Butterworth. I'm VP of Communications and Governance for Indicio. I'm joined by Ken Ebert, the Chief Technical Officer. Ken is coming to us from Utah. I am coming from the European Union, from Dublin, Ireland, and which kind of frames our discussion because we are talking about Europe's digital identity standards, digital wallet, and what it means for business. So let me give a little bit of background. The European Union has set, in a similar vein to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, digital targets for 2030. So it's a really super ambitious agenda. There are four kind of pillars: skills, digital transformation of business, secure and sustainable digital infrastructure, and the digitalization of public services, which leads us to, well, you can't really have public services without digitalization of public services without the digitalization of identity. With this digital identity, you can see that Europe wants everything to be possible online. It's hugely ambitious. But this is a journey of multiple countries, millions, hundreds of millions of people. And it starts out more or less back in 2014 with Europe are trying to define a digital, what is a digital identity? What is a national digital identity? And sort of countries had permission to create their own digital identities for these sort of access things. But eventually the realization was, well, how are we going to make all of these work together? Because the fundamental raison d'etre of the European Union is that it's a single market. But if everybody has a different digital identity standard, then that's going to make, one heck of a interoperability problem. And the initial challenge was to sort of try and put this interoperability architecture on top of all of these different digital identities, and that led to a lot of technical problems. So what's emerged in the last, sort of 4 or 5 years is the idea of a European Union digital wallet, which will be sort of mandated. Countries will be mandated to provide these, and of course they will provide the interoperability. So Ken, this is hugely ambitious, but what most people will think if they think of a digital wallet at all, they're going to think of maybe an Apple wallet or a Google wallet. What does Europe actually mean by a digital wallet?
The digital wallet is a place for holding your credentials, whether they're identity credentials, your driver's license, a diploma, bank account, health records. It's the idea of incorporating all of these things into a single wallet. Some of the wallet interactions are a little bit more ambitious than a simple Google or Apple wallet will allow. They also have mechanisms in place for verifying that these wallets have met the reliability and security standards before they're allowed to interact with highly secure services such as your national identity card or your passport or other financial information. This gives the assurance that the interactions are well thought out and that they can go beyond a single simple mechanism such as the Apple or Google Wallet support today. I think there's a possibility of enhancing or extending the Apple and Google wallets to participate in such an ecosystem to allow for the mechanisms of trust and the protocols and the standards to be adhered to by those wallets as well. But the initial focus is on an independent wallet that is allowed to hold all of these types of credentials and provide the wallet functionality, the consent mechanisms, for sharing and privacy and security to be complied with.
And of course, so one of the core ideas is that you'll have a national digital ID, which you'll be able to combine with a driving license or combine with a bank account. So that you're actually leveraging, the trust establishment of all of these documents to kind of create a super yet instant multi-factor authentication. So this has powerful, this is a real transformation of digital life, social and digital life.
You mentioned how ambitious this is, but the reasoning behind this ambition is the benefits and the huge impact that this will have on the ability for the citizens of these countries to get into a situation where their life is made easier, their life is made a little bit more secure, and that's the whole point behind it. So that's what's driving the whole effort, the reasoning behind why make such a concerted effort to move into a digital mechanism for all of these transactions.
So just to give a sense of, this is also, while this is also ambitious in a bureaucratic sense, and in that all of these countries have to come together and agree standards, and which has its own potential downside in that you have to please everybody rather than necessarily go with the standard that might be the most technologically ambitious. Anything? What should people? So Europe has chosen OID for VC as its kind of protocol. How should we understand that relative to the other sort of digital identity and wallet standards that are out there?
So the mechanism of OID for VC is inherently a client server type model. And that has some advantages that it's always initiated by the client or the end user in this case. The disadvantage of that is that you lack some of the peer-to-peer capabilities of other protocols such as DIDCOM, which would allow for messages to be initiated from the server side. And that could be either initiated from an issuer or initiated from a verifier. And those capabilities allow for the extension of the interaction to be a little bit more flexible and a little bit broader and extensible. But the basic protocol that they've chosen has some very good characteristics to it that it allows for extending the OID model to incorporate the ability to issue and verify credentials. And so having that familiarity with OID allows for that extension for OID for VC. The OID for VC stands for OID, Open ID for verifiable credentials. And it has two parts to it, the issuance part and the verifiable presentation part.
So
when you talk about the 27 countries, there are things that they're unified on. The regulations that they put together support this effort, and the regulations help provide uniformity. But there is an element of individual countries, where, particularly in trust establishment, where the government is the one that determines which wallets will be trusted in their jurisdictions. The trust establishment is more heavily centralized and certificate based, so it allows for good control mechanisms, but a little bit awkward in the interactions for the dance that you do to prove that you're agent, whether it's an issuer, verifier, or a holder agent, that they've been compliant. The regulation is what enables the cooperation between these member states, and the limitations of what they put in the regulations also keep a focus on it, but at the same time may need to be extended in the future to allow for other types of interactions that weren't anticipated in the initial regulation.
And we'll come back to that point a little bit later. But yes, there is a sort of a tension between let's all interoperate, but Europe also has a principle of subsidiarity, which sort of is a kind of decentralization. You've got to be able to make up your own, create your own solutions at a national level, because that's, there's always this balance between, sort of the sovereign nation autonomy and this sort of super state integration. So, but let's go back to these benefits. So, and this language is actually the language that more or less that the European Union describes the benefits of digital wallets and decentralized digital identities, which is very interesting. I mean, they really put a huge emphasis on user control. And that seems to me to draw on long-term concerns about centralized data in the hands of other companies, corporations, countries, where the user has sort of, ticked that box of in order to access a service and has no idea what they've actually consented to do in terms of sharing their data. So this is really a sort of, I mean, I read this as a real sort of putting the consumer first.
The consumer has the ability to choose where and when they want to share their data, but they are limited in some ways in order to protect the user. Some of the regulation does not allow for ad hoc interactions outside of the anticipated sphere of issuers and verifiers within the approved list by the various countries. And so there is that element of user control, which helps with compliance with GDPR and other privacy regulations. So I think it's a fairly strong model. It has some limitations, but I think that they'll begin to address some of those as the technology rolls out and as they get a little bit more experience with their pilots.
I think they one of the key things is that they want to certify wallets. So Europe seems to be concerned that uncertified wallets are a potential security risk.
By certifying the wallets, they can help eliminate the security risk, but they may dampen some of the initiative for wallets to develop rapidly and add new features quickly. That's a trade-off, and I think they've made a reasonable choice of protection versus innovation. And so there will be plenty of innovation happening. There already is, but that's one of the trade-offs in making all certified wallets be required.
We've sort of talked about usability, widespread usability as a sort of, I mean, that's the point, isn't it? Really, that you have an ID that can be verified in across multiple domains, across multiple countries.
Widespread usability also comes from the fact that the government is going to help participate and push this forward and provide you an ID that can be used somewhere. And so that's a really important initiative. If you have lots and lots of IDs in people's hands, then the verification becomes a valuable thing for the relying parties, the verifiers, to get involved with. And so the widespread usability, I think, is something that they are really pushing on, and they will make a huge impact.
Yeah, I mean, it's 450 million people is a non-trivial single market. What is this? So they also placed really a great deal of value on transparency, specifically using open source technology. Do you want to comment on that as a sort of a key value proposition of?
So there's two parts, I think, to their transparency effort. One is reliance on open standards, which helps push the standards forward and helps develop them and provides a large community of people interested in participating in the standards efforts. And in the same fashion, the emphasis on open source code allows for shared effort to produce functional bits of code that can be used in a way that benefits all to reduce costs and inherently promote interoperability by sharing those common code bases. So that's I think, a very valuable consideration in the approach that Europe has taken.
And in terms of security, I mean, obviously, this one of the key aspects of all of this is eliminating the sort of centralized databases filled with hackable, valuable data. I mean, we've often talked about decentralized identity as being a real sort of revolution in approaching security. It also sort of by having these sort of verifiable government or national identities, you have a real powerful way to address fraud. You know, are all things equal between OID for VC and say DIDCOM in security? I mean, are credentials that are being used in the rest of the world as good as or better than the what will be the EU national identity credentials, or vice versa?
So just to be clear, many parts of the rest of the world are using DIDCOM. Many parts of the world are also using OID for VC. The inherent security of the underlying cryptography and the protocols themselves, I think, is adequate to the task in both instances. I think that as different parts of the world land on different protocols, that there will be an interesting dance there. I think Indicio is highly in favor of interoperability, and as we demonstrated last fall, being able to, in a single interaction, invoke both DIDCOM and OID for VC in a single interaction, transparent to the end user. But that interoperability between them, I think, is an important consideration. I think that many countries will adopt the European style OID for VC and the other credential representations that they have chosen as a standard, because they can take advantage of some of the effort that Europe has put into this to help formulate standards within their own countries outside of the European Union. And so I think the security and the cryptography are adequate to the task. I think that there are parts of the cryptography suite that could be extended to provide enhanced privacy predicate proofs, for example. And I think that work is happening on that, and how mature it is, it will mature over the years and eventually provide, I think, maximum benefits.
Yep. And of course, you know, none of this would really take off if it didn't deliver, you know, absolutely game-changing, you know, transformation in usability. I mean, it's got to be significantly better than the way people share and present identity and data now. And of course, you know, one of the key ways this can now happen, instead of you having to manually input all your data in endlessly and over again to prove who you are in accessing a service, you can either just scan a QR code or present a QR code. Are people ready for this level of convenience, of frictionless interaction? I mean, it seems that that's exactly what the public wants, but it's almost like you almost have to pinch yourself and say, it's here.
Now, scanning the QR code is usually a mechanism for establishing a connection to another party without actually putting the data in the QR code itself. You could put the QR code data in the the QR code, but that makes it so that somebody taking a picture of your QR code could
Yes, yeah.
But the idea of using a QR code to enable quick connections and an ability to share the data, particularly on the verification side, if it's a little onerous on issuance, which I don't think it really is in particular. I think the KYC part of it, or the establishment of who you are before they issue a credential, will be necessarily correspond to the level of credential that you're trying to get. But the sharing, if we can make that rapid and high assurance that it's safe and secure, that makes it so you don't have to lug around a whole bunch of plastic cards. You don't have to carry a sheaf of papers to prove things. It's a huge benefit for both the holder of the technology, the citizen of the EU, and it's also a huge benefit to the relying parties because they have data in a reliable form that they can quickly determine whether it's legitimate or not, whether it came from a trusted source, and whether it's been tampered with. That allows for a very rapid access to the data in a secure manner that lets these businesses and other government services be able to quickly determine that they're dealing with the right person and provide those services in a very efficient fashion.
And of course, the magic behind this efficiency is governance, and is the governance rules for saying what you need to present and then making it all easy for you to swipe from your mobile phone, from your digital wallet, and provide the information that's needed.
Governance is um, fairly centralized in the EU model because it's not left up to individuals or individual relying parties to determine who they trust. It's a centralized mechanism based on certificates. It's a little less flexible than a more distributed ecosystem governance model, such as the DIF standard for trust establishment. But it is an adequate mechanism for establishing that trust, and that will allow for those interactions, as you mentioned, to easily be able to share data quickly and provide that benefit to everyone.
And so I mean, we've kind of talked about this, and clearly this is starting out as a way to access government services clearly high up on the agenda, and you can seamless digital access, cross-border interoperability, and fraud prevention. We've sort of discussed those, but they are clear benefits for government.
One of those benefits for government, I think, is that a more efficient provisioning of services, cross-border interoperability. This isn't something that the EU they're not first place in providing that. Indicio has already provided cross-border crossing with verifiable credentials to allow that to occur. I think that we're helping the EU figure out how to do that within their protocols and their suite as well. Fraud prevention is both for government services and independent. That's a benefit that's shared with both the government and private organizations.
Well, I was about to get to the private slide. So what they list, what from their perspective, the benefits for the business and consumer are: you're going to reduce the cost of authentication, and you're going to reduce the friction of authentication. You're going to reduce dependence on identity platforms. And because you're doing all this and you're providing such trust, actionable trust, they predict that all those drop-offs from online transactions will go away. People will feel more confident about purchasing and making payments online. There will be increased market reach because everything is interoperable. And, then there's the vague, well, there'll be new business opportunities. But I think it's fair to say that when you can reduce uncertainty in sort of digital transactions to such a degree and at such a scale, you're able to do things that simply cannot be done with current legacy technology. That a fair reading?
Yes, and I think the overall increase to the velocity of their economy will be noticeable, and it will provide a more efficient economy and thus better services to all of the citizens.
Excellent. So we've already alluded to Indicio working with Europe. Let's expand on that. We're actually involved, not just in terms of making our digital wallet interoperate with European standards, but we're actually actively working on a European project. Can you talk about that?
Yes, we're involved in one of the pilots. The EU is running multiple pilots, at least four of them. There will
Hmm.
probably be more. But as these large-scale pilots roll out, they're intended to target specific use cases to increase the visibility and the discovery of where are the friction points, how does the technology adapt to that particular use case, and so forth. And we're involved in a project called Aptitude, and our focus is on particularly taking our accomplishments with CETA and digital travel and bringing those into reality inside the EU wallet and the EU specifications to make those benefits available to within the EU. So that's our primary role there.
And in fact, it's fair to say that travel is really on the cutting edge of digital transformation in terms of identity. Uh, and it really shows the streamlining process and the efficiency process in action. So, by having everything in a credential, suddenly you have an entire, array of frustrating, difficult, bureaucratic interaction and UX experience, user experiences off the table. You make your connection and you share the necessary data. And what's interesting, and of course, we have, Indicio has been at the cutting edge of this. And in fact, this is what we're able to do with a sufficiently, identity assured credential. Like that's what we call a digital passport credential based on ICAO, which is the global body that sets passport standards. ICAO have what they call a digital travel credential specification. They have different types. The type 1 is where somebody is able to generate a digital credential from the data that's embedded in the passport, and we add liveness checks and checks on the validity of the passport. So you have this super powerful credential that governments can trust, and we can do all this. Um,
The beauty of having that digital passport credential, which encapsulates a digital travel credential type 1, a derived credential of digital travel credential from the ICAO standard, is that now you have a reliable mechanism to remotely present this data to any of these points along this travel ribbon, whether it's for entering the airport or bag drop security, boarding and border crossings. But you also have the ability to rely on that data in a way that encapsulates the biometrics in a privacy preserving way, a decentralized way. And that's a really important part of it. With the new trials within the European Union, Indicio will be pioneering work on the DTC Type 2. The difference between a Type 1 and the Type 2 digital travel credential is that the Type 1 is derived from the passport, or within that passport is where the DTC Type 1 data comes from. But the Type 2, it's directly issued as a credential from the issuing authority, the government, the passport office of the local country. And so I think this is a step forward. The DTC Type 2 is not fully ratified yet, but I think this will be a part of that process to make sure that the credential embodies the correct data and that it is useful and functional. And I expect to see the DTC Type 2 rolling out as part of this European Union process and worldwide beyond just the EU.
So that's enormous. And I mean, in a sense, that, a DTC Type 2 is the ultimate in portable digital identity. Um, and that has huge implications. I mean, that basically any European country that's kind of lagging in creating its own national digital identity can just, use the what will be the DTC Type 2 specifications, and they're ready to go. But
All
one of
citizens need to have a passport. And so, although it is a really strong credential and it's very useful for international travel and for other purposes beyond its original intent,
Mhm.
there will be other cases where a national identity um, credential or a driver's license might fill the need a little bit better, a banking account credential, those types of, there are different credentials for different purposes, just like we have today in the physical world. You'll still have a wide variety of credential types that will be important. But I think that you're right that the very high level of assurance that is associated with a passport and DTC type credentials will be of very high value to all the people who receive them and all of the relying parties and the verifiers who are going to depend on them.
And of course, the magic is in making all of these work together. I mean, where is the European Union? So I know the European Union has got a trial on payments, and they've got a trial. You know, we're working on the trial on travel, but have they got round to integrating any of these yet?
I think that the wallet standards allow for fairly straightforward integration of the various types of credentials that are being put into play. I think that one area that the travel credential will highlight is the fact that Europe has focused on within the EU context primarily, and they haven't spent the regulation nor the specifications have dealt fully yet with the concept of taking credentials generated within the EU outside of the EU for verification there, or a credential that was created in some other country in other part of the world and bringing those credentials into the EU for participation. And so that's an area of focus that I think that we'll see some change and growth and enhancement as the trials move forward and as the technology is rolled out.
Well, so this slide in some way overlaps with you know, so following on from what you just said, you know, how is this impacting the rest of the world? Are we all about to be effectively EU citizens, or the fact that, you know, this is possible within a different credential environment already means that Europe is going to play catch up? How do you see the race between, you know, sort of commercial interest driving innovation and, you know, government? Who's going to win that? What's going to happen? Sorry, I'm asking you to crystal ball. Take your crystal ball out, your virtual crystal ball.
Yeah, the difference between the government and the businesses typically can move a little faster than governments. Governments have to be a little more methodical and careful in their rolling out of citizen impacting services and technologies. And so I think that in many aspects, the government will always be a little bit slower. But the fact that the government in the EU is become involved in this is helping push and drive forward these standards and the technology and the adoption. And it's enabling businesses as the businesses say, hey, this is working great for us, accept. And they'll come up with things that could be enhanced or improved. And over time, I think that will happen. But the EU isn't the only player in town. The EU, by its leadership in adopting this for their citizens and making a concerted effort for it, is providing an example to other countries. Other countries will adopt the same technology and may have some slight variations on it, but they will follow some of Europeans' lead. Other countries are moving faster than the EU have already deployed. You look at India. India has deployed the Digiatra, which is a credential-based system based on DIDCOM and non-creds for their technology stack. And some of the benefits and the real-world experiences there may affect Europe as well. So it's not one. It's not a clear cut. One's a leader and one's a follower. In some parts, Europe will lead, and in other parts, they will follow inherently.
And I suppose the one way of thinking about it, it's mutually reassuring. It's like, yeah, we're all going in on this in some shape or form.
Yes. And the reason for that is because the benefits are clear. And that promotes adoption of the technology, whether it's a DIDCOM or OID for VC, or whether it's open badges or MDoc, MDL. The nuances of different credential styles and protocols will necessarily be there to adapt to different use cases and different levels of assurance that are needed for a particular interaction. But the innovation as a whole, I think, will be greatly benefited by what Europe's doing and help drive things forward.
So what's the takeaway if you're a business in Europe right now? I mean, so this is these identity standards and sort of rollout is supposed to happen pretty soon in Europe. The clock is ticking, but as we know, things involving, 27 member states can sometimes take a bit longer. Um, but, there's what, 12 to a year to 2 years, this is all going to be real and widespread. What should you do if you're a business in Europe or outside Europe and with EU customers, or you're outside Europe and you want to do business with the EU? What should you be thinking now in terms of your digital infrastructure and digital identity, and what should you be preparing for, and who should be preparing first? Where's the real, where's the urgency to get to grips with this?
There's a lot of focus right now on the wallet. But the real benefit comes when somebody is going to verify or become a relying party for this verifiable credential data. And within the EU, if you're a business, you want to be thinking about, hey, there's going to be this, it's going to roll out, whether it's fully mature or not. It'll start to roll out. It'll evolve over time, but it's going to roll out. And so if you're ready to accept this type of data and bring it into your business flows and enhance your user experience, you're going to benefit from the high quality data. People right now are really focused on the government identities that are issued, but there's also the possibility for issuing lesser, not the level of passport, but you might have an identity issued to a customer or an account to allow them to interact with your business, and coupons and all sorts of other things that can be issued as credentials, educational certificates and student IDs, all sorts of fun things that are not necessarily government identities. And so businesses can first figure out how to consume the existing cool government identities that are coming, but they can also figure out how are they going to issue their own particular credentials that make their customers' lives easier, and then verify those, or create ecosystems or systems of partners who have mutually beneficial credentials that might circulate between aligned businesses. And that's within the EU. If you're outside the EU, but you want to do business with EU customers, you're going to need to provide some kind of compatibility with that European wallet and those European credentials. You may need to issue a credential to within the EU, even though you're a business that's outside of the EU and you have an EU customer. So you're going to need to figure out what Europe is doing and provide interoperability there. And I think if you do, you're going to see some benefits. I think that the international travel will highlight some of the interactions of the outside of Europe businesses or countries, and how they're going to interact with the EU, both as with the governments and with the citizens of the EU.
And given that you can interoperate between systems, between DIDCOM and OID for VC, there are significant benefits for businesses in taking a DIDCOM route.
There are, because the technology is peer-to-peer. It allows for extension of the protocol. OID and for VC is limited to issuance and verification of credentials at this point in time. So there's more things, more extensibility within the DIDCOM route. The real benefit, I think, is not one or the other. It's doing both. And that's been our philosophy at Indicio, is that it's not going to be one protocol, one standard or representation for a credential, but there will be a multiplicity of these, and being able to work with them in the majority of these in a efficient manner allows for the greatest benefit and the greatest flexibility for both the travelers, the bank customers, the citizens, and for the relying parties that are verifying these types of credentials. The more you can operate with, the more options that you have as a business, more benefit you will provide to your customers or to your citizens or those participating.
And again, it is, of course, it's as you mentioned, but I just want to underscore that verifiable credential technology isn't just about personal data and personal identity. It's about any sort of making any sort of document verifiable, and ensuring that it can be communicated in a tamper-proof way. So it has huge implications for supply chains and shipping and invoicing, all of which can radically simplify and and reduce, the threat of fraud, including biometric fraud, which is something that everybody is really concerned with. I know I'm doubling back to personal identity, but the ability to store a authenticated biometric in a credential means that you have a way of cross-checking somebody who's presenting for a remote biometric scan, a remote liveness check. And that has really huge implications for, payments and call center management, and I think critically, whatever ends up happening with agentic AI, which is, a very exciting area, which will inevitably come. And AI agents will also need identity. So it's identity for people, identity for organizations, identity for devices, identity for AI, identity for things, even, any digital object that can be defined by, cameras and sensors, that can have an identity. So that's where all of this scales massively.
Yeah, you talk about identity for organizations, devices, people, and that's part of it. So which organization, which device you're talking to, which AI agent you're talking to. Those are all critical parts of it. But there's also data that isn't really anything about identity. It's data that's being exchanged that might not have anything to do with my identity. It might have something to do with my location or a composition of parts in an automobile or something like that. They're not really the identity parts of it. They might be more data that's used to analyze performance or sourcing of goods, whether they're agricultural or physical goods, and helps supply a different type of data that goes with that. But that idea of agents that represent, for instance, a Internet of Things type of object, maybe they don't have the same wallet needs and the same privacy concerns. Some of them do, some of them won't. But that allows for the non-human entities like businesses, governments, and IoT devices or sensors to participate in an ecosystem of trust and still exchange data reliably. And I think that's another place where you can really get excited about how things are going to go. You also talked about biometric data. The ability to encapsulate biometric data in a credential that's held just by that person and not in a centralized business storing the biometric data, where you have to rely on either a third party to store your data or the business is aggregating your personal data, and that's against regulation. The ability to encapsulate biometric data, fingerprints, iris, face, voice, whatever type of biometric it is, into a credential allows for a lot more security, privacy, and reduction in fraud.
Yep. Super interesting. If we have any questions, happy to take them now.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about MDL, the mobile driver's license specification, Ken, and how that relates to what we're talking about today.
So mobile driver's license is an interesting credential representation. Initially planned to just be proximity sharing. With the new extension to the specification, there's the ability to remotely share that. It's one of many types of credential representations that allows for the specification was originally targeted toward just driver's license, but the MDoc allows for many types of credentials to be encapsulated in that representation. It has its own unique set of characteristics. originally meant to be, either tapped or um, any of the very local physical proximity methods of sharing. But with the extension to allow for remote sharing, I think it extends the usefulness of both the driver's license and can be generalized to the MDoc representation as well, so that it becomes yet another contender in the how do we represent data. I think the European Union is encapsulating the driver's license into one of its credential types. So they're recognizing the value of that protocol, both the protocols associated with it and the representation for a method for storing credentials.
So it kind of goes back to the idea that there won't be one credential to rule them all. There will be this need for multiple different credentials, protocols, representations, all sort of being able to work together in the future.
Yeah, and not all credential types can use all protocol mechanisms because the unique characteristics of them. But um, a common core of protocols will start to emerge. Adaptations and new protocols will continue to emerge. New cryptography suites will continue to be developed. Old ones will need to be phased out as the computing power deems them as no longer reliable or safe as a mechanism for storing data or signing data. So signature styles, cryptography suites, credential representations, protocols, those will all continue to evolve. And so anyone who's either building a wallet or any type of agent to represent either people, organizations, or IoT devices or any other type of data needs to keep in consideration that this is an evolving technology, and just keep that in mind. Be flexible. Don't think that there's one credential type that's going to rule them all. Just that the two most common government issued IDs are passport and probably the driver's license. The third one might be national health card, and they have different purposes and levels of security required for them. So you can see already inherent differences between different types of credentials with just those three.
Mm. No, thank you for that. Any other questions, comments, final thoughts on the topic today?
I want to throw out some praise to the EU for taking this initiative to providing the benefits. I think that they're undertaking a very big step and they're trying to do it in an accelerated timeline. I think that is commendable. I think that their process of reviewing both their regulation and their specifications is a prudent one, and that I think that over time they will have provided some really awesome services to their citizens, and I think that their economy and their citizens will definitely benefit from that.
Well said.
And if the outpouring of interest on the topic at Indicio from incoming queries about the technologies, any indicator, I feel like we're all going to be using digital wallets here in a minute. There's a lot of momentum that we're seeing, and I'm really excited to see what the future has to offer. I think even in 2025, I know that the specification's not intended to be implemented, I think, till 2026. Is that what you said? But I think things are going to move pretty darn fast all around the world.
I think that particularly in travel, we'll be able to have some impact there to take some of our experiences that we've learned prior to these trials and help implement safe and secure travel and travel credentials within the EU. I think that's a big bet. The effort is so huge that Indicio will not be the only one making a contribution.
One can dream.
We'll have a small part. We'll have a significant contribution in travel and in implementing those bits in particular, but in general, we'll have a contribution as well. But there are a lot of parties involved here. It's a huge community of people pushing things forward. We're happy to be part of that community and to help provide leadership in some of the areas where we have some good experience.
Absolutely. Well, if there are no other questions from attendees, you can feel free to pop them in the chat. We'll just wrap up here. Thank you so much for this conversation today. I think that like we've been saying, the future is very bright for this technology, and it's it's moving very fast, and we're very excited to see what's ahead. Thank you, Trevor. Thank you, Ken, for your time. Thank you all for being here. If you're watching the recording, please go ahead and share the YouTube link here. Subscribe more to Indicio's content. We are grateful for your time here. If you have any other questions, if you want to get in touch with us, we are I think our information is in the meetup page, or go to indicio.tech if you have any other questions. Thank you, and we'll see you next month for another conversation about in the world of decentralized identity. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.